The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster by, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Chris Thomas, MHK, was on yesterday. We're open line through till 1, so if there's anything you'd like to raise after what Mr. Thomas had to say, and he had plenty to say, then get in touch. And anything else that's on your mind? No, we don't know why the Manxman hasn't set sail yet, why she isn't paying passengers. She's been a very pleasant ornament around Douglas Harbour at the moment, but we did buy her. She is supposed to be taking passengers, and as soon as we know why she's not taking passengers at the moment, then we'll tell you. 8 minutes past 12. David's first on with us today. Hi, David.
Magic. I didn't realise when I sent you that letter from Jeff Robinson, the DOI, that would cause a national incident. Can I just say that this morning you ran a little news article too about the two members from Ballasalla down south there. Tim Glover was in the department. He jumped ship early. I just wondered, why doesn't he stay in the department and do something about it? We're looking for solutions, not an argument to say that they couldn't happen. The biggest question I'd ask out there to everybody is, can I ask them all out there is, if this was at your home, would you like it? That's the issue. When they have camper vans there, big vehicles, commercial vehicles. I just thought the other day, and I've asked an inquiry into the DOI in the traffic department there, is when a vehicle comes up for test to the Isle of Man, if it's an English vehicle, I presume, I think it's called a habitation certificate, where the vehicle's got to be checked to make sure the gas is okay, the vehicle is sound and whatever. Most of the vehicles that I've seen and taken photographs of are rust buckets and shouldn't be off the road, and they're lying in certain places for months, 1 to 6 months been lying there. I can prove that. Its tax disc was up on the 31st of July. It's not been renewed. So is it that an offence? I would say yes.
What Tim Glover said today, David, was he said it's like punishing the whole class at the rather than dealing with an individual troublemaker. So he says they want to rethink these proposals that will make it illegal to park large vehicles over a certain length or height on these speed-restricted roads. So do you think it is just a few people who are inconsiderate that are spoiling it for the majority of considerate motorhome owners?
Yes, and it's not just motorhomes. They've kicked onto that. It is an element of that because they're not moved around probably from 6-7 months at the end. And I listened to the radio program when I saw a fella, a nice guy that said he has a motorhome and then he stores it somewhere. Don't know whether he stores it undercover, but maybe takes it off the highway. So therefore, wouldn't it be nice if the DOI said to them, look, if you're taking it off the highway, you prove it for 6 months. You only need 6 months tax for the summer. And then Chris gets a 1 star for saying it needs to be addressed, but he gets 2 minus marks for saying it was always down to TT week and maybe, Grand Prix. It's not. It goes on week after week, month after month, year after year. Let's get together and do something about it.
So you're saying this is something called a habitation certificate?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I'm waiting for the word from the street, away from the experts, the vehicle testing centre. I've asked them the question. A couple of things was, I know law says if it's a heavy goods vehicle, it shouldn't be on the highway at night, overnight parking all weekend. So that's an offence. But it has to be done by the police. And I'm not blaming the traffic wardens. They don't work at the weekend, do they? But maybe, and I'm not encouraging them to come out at the weekend, but maybe if they did come out at the weekend, they'd probably pick up quite a few bob all the time. And can I say to you, the horse box for those horse enthusiasts is now moved to Belgravia Road near Onken tennis courts. It's a massive thing. It's in date. I've looked at it. It looks really great. But should it be parked in a residential area in a 30 zone?
Well, nobody's
overnight?
keeping a horse around Oncombe Park, are they?
I didn't knock on the door, and nothing said nay. So I don't believe there's anything in it, because that would be really massive and cruel, Andy, wouldn't it? But
well,
let's see.
You'd know, wouldn't you?
Well, we certainly would know. But the question I'd ask everybody is, if this was happened to you, wouldn't you do something about it? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
So let's do something.
Good to hear from you. Thanks, David.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Now, it's 12 minutes past 12 on Manx Radio. Well, this is coming to a head, and there possibly will be some legislation concerning the parking of large vehicles, and we don't quite know the exact, but we've been given a rough idea of what the length and height of these vehicles may be. Large vehicles, which will include motorhomes. Now, some motorhomes are small. There are tiny motorhomes, and then there are big motorhomes. There are enormous motorhomes. There are well-kept motorhomes, and there are rust buckets. We've all seen them around. We've all seen some motorhomes that are left on streets for months. So what do we do? And again, let's keep we want to be civil about this. We want to get through this. There is an issue with this, as there is an issue of people parking, again, rust bucket cars outside and on residential streets and leaving them there for weeks, leaving them with flat tyres and covered in rust and what have you. And there are certain things, in fact, I did ask a wee while ago if there is a car that's not been moved for a long time, then by all means send me a photo. We'll keep it all on record and just see how many there actually are around the Isle of Man. Just cars that have been kept on residential streets for months and months, sometimes years on end. I did get sent the photo, and I went to look at the one by Middle River Industrial Estate. There's a truck there that's got grass growing underneath it. It's been there that long. But do get in touch. And certainly, Tim Glover is going to be here on Monday. We're in the south on Monday with the Yarborough Castle Town and Maloo MHKs. Jason Morehouse and Tim Glover will be on. So we'll certainly ask Tim about this. But again, this MHK is asking for a rethink of proposals which would make it illegal to park large vehicles over a certain length or height on speed-restricted roads. The plans, which aren't officially in a consultation period, have received significant backlash, with more than 3,000 signatures on a petition to scrap the idea. So this member's written to the Chief Minister with a number of concerns, says he's received one of the biggest responses to any subject since becoming a politician. Christian's been looking at exactly what this is.
The proposals will make it an offence to park any vehicle parked on island speed-restricted roads that are over 1.87 metres in height or 5.5 metres in length. It would apply between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. Monday to Friday and all day Saturday and Sunday. Those in breach face a £60 fixed penalty notice, which could be issued by the police, your local commissioners or the Department of Infrastructure. MHK Tim Glover, who represents Albury, Castletown and Maloo, thinks it won't just affect residents but also the tourist sector and potentially even the TT.
At an extreme, yes. I've had people get in touch that do marshal at the TT Manx Grand Prix or 700 and say if they are not going to be able to bring their camper van or motorhome over, which they would do normally, and be able to park it where they would normally do with friends, they won't be coming over. As simple as that. So there is a lot of high feeling. I think the context, of course, is that this is infrastructure trying to work with local authorities to identify what issues in, and there's the opt-out clause in there. But whatever the way it's been communicated, put out there, it really has set a few hairs running, and I think there's a call for some clarification and a rethink, really, as to where they're going with this.
Something we've heard previously is government are too heavy-handed, and you've also compared this proposal to using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Well, I think we all know that there's the odd problem vehicle out there, and maybe have been left for a very long time or indeed abandoned in some cases. So rather than apply the sledgehammer, why not try and deal with the issues that you have ready to hand? I think there has to be some common sense applied here. There is a lack, particularly in areas of my constituency, of any off-road parking.
Do you think that this could also have a wider impact on public services? I know in your letter you've mentioned that for workers in infrastructure, Manx Utilities, Isle of Man Energy and even the emergency services, it could affect them as well.
Indeed it could. And the other area vital to the Manx economy, and that's the sole traders.
If these proposals were brought in, how do you think that they would be policed?
Good question. Can you answer that one? That's the problem. We tend to bring in these enforcement measures, and there's no consideration really given to exactly how they're going to be policed. So I don't have an answer to that question.
Albury, Castletown, Amalu, MHK Tim Glover speaking there, who's calling for a rethink of the plans.
That's our good friend Christian Jones, and obviously we'll bring this up with Tim Glover when he's here on Monday. Dodsy's with us now. Hi, Dodsy.
Hey, Andy. Hey, listeners. Yeah, I just want to touch on this petition that's going on, because I live in 2nd Avenue in Onken, and they've got a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit up the way to Ashley Park. And that means that the van I take home to and from work every day, I'll be incurring charges unless I leave my van down at work. Now, it is a privilege of sorts that I'm allowed to take the van home to and from work, because we have to deliver our pallets sometimes to another firm to get rid of them so that we can do sea travel. Anyway, but I really hope that this thing doesn't go through, because it's going to be such bad news for those who have clean vehicles, clean work vehicles. And I think it's one of these where people are taking their flatbed vehicles, or, I've known people to take rigid vehicles home with them, but they're usually not in anywhere near a tourist area as such.
Yeah.
And, when they've taken these high-sided vehicles home, they're usually away from main roads, and they're clean, tidy, and tucked away. So I reckon this Chris Thomas, he's probably had some really selfish driver park outside his house. And he's like, well, I'm going to make it law so that people don't disgrace my street that I live on, sort of attitude. I reckon that's kind of where it's come from, because I know that when I was delivering up around Glen Alden, there was an MHK who was living up there, and the road got quite badly potholed one winter, and it was very coincidental that the road got resurfaced a couple of weeks later on. So I reckon the MHK are abusing their power and saying, I'm going to make this law so that you can't park outside my house because they're disgruntled with their neighbours.
Well, we'll find out, Dozzy. Thanks for that. Good to hear from you. I want to go to Julie, who's with us now. Hi, Julie.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
It was just a little query really on this. I've been, I have a smaller car, so it's not really affecting me, although I do have a van that might be affected. But the question I want to know is, we already have a law on the Isle of Man about where certain vehicles are restricted to park between 6 p.m. and 9 a.m., overnight parking and weekend parking on any roads that have restrictions, so housing estates, wherever. And so my question is if we already have this law, which would affect any large vans, any motorhomes, which obviously that seems to be where everybody thinks that they're targeting, why aren't they being enforced, and why are they now changing it so that will take into account things like Land Rovers, mum buses, and pretty much any larger, normal, everyday car.
I think one of the issues, Julie, is that cars are now a lot bigger than they used to be. 50-odd years ago, a Mini was a Mini. It was tiny.
It was a Mini.
And now a
Yep.
Mini is as big as an old Ford Cortina. They're big cars now. And certainly, as you say, SUVs and things like that and minibuses that some people have, these are chunky vehicles. And for a lot of our streets, they just weren't designed for half a dozen of these to be parked.
No, but why do they need to change the law when the law is already there?
Well,
They're
I wonder.
looking at amending a law that, the current law states that it's on a weight, so it's over 3,050 kilos. They are not allowed to already park there. But I also know, because I had a problem with somebody parking a motorhome in right in front of a window. You couldn't see out the window, which was just a bad design where it was. And it was agreed by the local authority that was a problem, but they never did anything about it.
So no enforcement?
That's the problem. Yeah.
So we're getting now as to who enforces and who sanctions people who are parked illegally.
Yeah, because you've got, I don't know any traffic wardens that work after 5 o'clock at night, but the law that is currently in place doesn't come into effect until 6 p.m. and weekends. So who is then going to be, charged with enforcing, even if they do change the law? It's not going to make any difference because there's nobody there to put the tickets on the vehicles.
All right, we'll keep asking the questions, Julie. Thanks for calling today.
Yeah. All right, take care.
Good to hear from you. Thank you. Tony B's now with us. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Andy. I sympathise with all these people who are phoning in about high-sided vehicles and everything else, but I think this is just a con from the DOI to divert attention from all the serious things that they're not doing. So it's once again, everybody's talking about vehicles, and like the ladies just said, you've got laws, they're just not being enforced, but we'll all want to change the law. Why do you want to keep persecuting people who drive? If you want to change the law and you want to stop people parking outside, then say in the law that you can't park a high-sided vehicle outside of somebody else's house. Full stop. That's it. Done. That's all you have to change. You don't have to start talking about how tall it is, how much it weighs. And like she said, you've already got a limitation on weight limit on a speed-restricted road. This is just the DOI diverting attention from their incompetence. I'm much more interested in how come the DOI have employed somebody who has a criminal record in Norway to advise on oil issues. And the person involved doesn't have any technical expertise at all in developing oil fields. So Chris Thomas is extremely naive in his statements that we've got all these experts. Whose experts? Where did he get them from? I think Alf Cannon has got his work cut out, that's all I can say.
What did you think about what Mr. Thomas had to say about Kroger yesterday?
I think he's out to lunch. He doesn't know anything about oil development, and he's going on about we can't damage the reservoir. Does he actually know anything about what he's saying, or is somebody else putting those words in his mouth? Because when you drill into a reservoir, that comes within the drilling plan, which has to be approved under the regulations. So if your regulations are in place and you say, OK, when you drill into this reservoir, you must have this casing at this point before you drill into the reservoir, which is normal technical speak. So in other words, when you enter a gas reservoir, you must have a casing back to surface, which this is Shell standard, it's not necessarily BP, but Shell standard is before you drill into the reservoir, you set a casing in a cat rock for the reservoir, and that casing must be cemented back to surface so you have integrity all the way from the reservoir to the surface. And then you enter with a smaller drill and punch through into the reservoir. That's standard practice. If Chris Thomas had bothered to go talk to a few people and understand what goes on, he wouldn't need all these so-called experts, which he's probably paying for, who've got their own agendas. Kroger are not stupid, but the person involved at the DOI needs to be able to understand what the drilling plan's saying. Well, who at the DOI has got any drilling experience at all?
Well, you then get to the situation, Tony, of, our experts and your experts.
Right, okay. So if I was looking for an expert, I'd be looking for somebody who operates a drilling rig. I wouldn't be looking for somebody who operates in an oil company environment. The people that drill the wells are not the oil company. That's done by a drilling outfit. So he's looking at the wrong experts. But the so-called experts have got question marks all over them. I'm not being mean, but this it doesn't come down to Chris Thomas. It comes down to somebody at the DOI who's brought people in, and probably the HR department, haven't looked at these people with the right criteria and looking for the right person. They're just getting somebody who's got a big, oh yeah, this bloke, he must be an expert. It's just hard to believe.
You obviously operate. You're speaking from a position of privilege because you've been in the petrochemical industry for a long time. You were in it for a long time. Now, most people have no idea. In fact, yesterday I didn't know how deep it was. Chris Thomas told me it was 2 kilometres deep. Now, most people don't know. But what I will guarantee, Tony, is nobody wants it to go wrong. So, again,
fine.
Who do we believe?
Right, so if you don't want it to go wrong, you don't believe the so-called experts you've brought in, you go to somebody who's done this for 30, 40, 50 years, which is the UK board that controls all drilling in the North Sea, and say to them, have a look at these regulations, so they fit for purpose. You don't need an expert from Norway to tell you whether they're fit for purpose, because their regulations are different. And this is within the UK. So why would you go to Norway? Why would you get a Norwegian expert, so-called, who's not an expert because he just ran a company? He used to work for a different company before he worked for Statoil, because Statoil bought the company. What I'm trying to get to is, this is not about getting experts in. This is about using your head. And Chris Thomas is being naive if he really thinks that the DOI has gone out and got the right people. It's hard to believe. It staggers me. If you wanted to know how to drill an oil well, there's some very good literature out there. Anybody can go and read it. Or a gas well, for that matter. But the gas well's a little bit more careful because there's less hydrostatic in the well. In other words, there's less pressure to control the gas flow. I mean, I could send you information which you could put on your website. Anybody can read it. It's as simple as pie. It's not complicated. But there are certain things you need to do, and they are in the laws. That's in the rules for the North Sea. You don't need to go out and get an expert to tell you if the rules are wrong. You just need to accept their rules. They've drilled dozens and dozens of gas wells in the North Sea.
Okay, all right.
And
well,
without major problem.
We watch and wait. Thanks for calling, Tony. Have a good weekend.
By the way, Andy, 2 kilometres is a very shallow well. It's not deep.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
All right. Welcome.
All right, cheers now. Chris Thomas, Pat dropped a note in just to say, regarding his comments on Manx Radio News regarding motorhomes, would he like to write to all UK motorhome clubs, road racing clubs, and from now on, just say you're not welcome to visit the Isle of Man in a van or motorhome or face big fines. Already, TT fans are posting on race sites and have started cancelling their bookings next year. Well, that's Pat. I don't know, he actually said that you're not welcome. They're just talking about bringing in some restrictions. Later today, I'm going to park my motorhome outside your home. You can have all weekend to inspect the rust, tax and road condition, says 223. Right, okay. Too many cars parked near our entrance of St Ninian's Court. The yellow lines have been shortened. Cars are rushing past. We need to make St Ninian's a slow drive area too. My suggestion is for motorhome owners to ask for permission to park, says 817. Park their vehicles on a public road in residential areas. It works for planning applications and building control, so why wouldn't it work there? That's my suggestion, says Michelle. And a message in from Freddie, who just says, if you want to know about inconsiderate parking, go to Howe Road in Onken and look at the top of Howe Road. There's a house there with a dozen or more cars outside in trendy upper class Howe Road in Onken. I must take a look at that. I've just taxed my motorhome for 6 months, says Andy on 425. And the reason the Manxman isn't sailing is because the car deck surface is too slippery to carry any freight. Well, that's 776's opinion. I think we may be hearing something from the steam packet later on today. We just would love to know why the Manxman has been here for, well, is it now 2 weeks and more, and isn't going into service yet? I wonder why.
Who's thinking about boilers in the summer? We are. At Manx Petroleum, we know that a well-maintained boiler will work at optimum efficiency all year round, ready to perform whenever you need it to. So get in touch and arrange for a service today. You should also look into our maintenance and servicing plans for oil-fired boilers and tanks, where you can spread the costs interest-free over 12 months using our budget account. Visit mp.im for more details. Manx Petroleum, always here for you.
Discover a fabulous range of watches, gifts and jewellery at Ramsey Art Gallery, with top brand watches from Blover, Citizen Eco Drive and Storm to Acura, Seconda and Timex. Plus, all watch purchases come with free lifetime watch bracelet adjustment service. There's stunning gold and silver jewellery, gifts for all occasions, and of course a fabulous gallery of limited edition prints and original artworks. Find all this and more at Ramsey Art Gallery, Jewellers and Engravers, opposite Ramsey RNLI shop.
For powerboat training to become more confident and knowledgeable in our waters, or how to use a boat safely and gain an RYA qualification, contact Chris at Chell Marine on 22 1000 or visit chellmarine.co.uk.
Welcome to the Ramsey Park Hotel, where there's always a warm welcome and something to enjoy. Nestling beside Muirrook Lake with sea views towards Cumbria, the Ramsey Park Hotel is a stunning destination for your staycation. Take advantage of a fabulous 2-night stay with a glass of champagne on arrival, dinner for 2 nights accommodation and breakfast, all for just £290. For more news on food, offers and events, call 818-123 or visit the Ramsey Park Hotel on Facebook.
The 2023-24 NWCFL Premier Division season is now underway, and FC Isle of Man will be hoping to make it back-to-back home wins this weekend. The Ravens will host Litherland Remica at the Bowl this Saturday, with the Merseyside outfit still hunting their first win of the new campaign. Join me, Rob Pritchard and Sam Palmer for FC Isle of Man versus Litherland Remica this Saturday, kicking off at 6 p.m. Manx Radio will be providing full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. Live coverage of FC Isle of Man on Manx Radio is supported by Selton, investing in our community.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mike, good afternoon. Bonzo's on. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello. Yes, just responding to Tony B, because I think I think he's a bit mixed up on some of the things that Chris Thomas was saying and pointing out. Because I think Tony B was implying that Richard Hubbard, the controversial CEO of Kroger, was actually an advisor to government on this. Now, that would be pretty much the conflict of interest of the century, if that was the case. So I don't think that's so. And also, coming on to issues with the DOI and whether it's a political distraction or such. Well, I think you have to look at who is going to make the political decision at the DOI. The Chief Minister, who is now the Minister of the DOI, Kate Lord-Brennan, Minister of the Cabinet Office, and Stu Peters as departmental member of the Department of Infrastructure. Now, if I went down to the bookies and said that those people weren't going to give Kroger everything they demanded, I'll be getting very long off. I think Kroger, if not opening the champagne, certainly probably have it on ice with that.
Do you think there's a direct? I mean, Stu Peters is a self-confessed petrol head, but is there is there a firm line between Stu Peters and his backing of Kroger? Do you think?
Oh, how do you mean a firm line behind him? Do you mean constituency,
or do you think it's a given that Stu Peters would support the go-ahead for Kroger to go ahead?
With anything I've seen from Stu Peters on social media and any other comment, I think people would be startlingly surprised if he didn't, to put it mildly. So I think that's it's pretty much a given. Alf Cannon's statements, well, that's pretty much a given. So, there were a couple of other things as well. The other advice that Tony was talking about to DOI. Well, such amateurs as the British Geological Survey, apparently some of the advisors, and the the North Sea Authority. I can't remember the precise name of it, but the one that oversees operations in the North Sea.
Yeah.
I'd hardly sort of call that kind of amateur or dilettantish advice. And when we talk about the drilling as well, some people are getting a bit confused between kilometres and miles, because what's that? 3,000 feet. Sounds a bit shallow for a thing, whereas 2 miles, no, that's more like it.
Yeah, well, he said that 2 kilometres was a bit shallow for a drill.
Oh yeah. I mean, as I say, well, not 2 kilometres. I say a kilometre is 3,000 feet. So 6,000 feet. That sounds a bit, that sounds a bit low.
Yeah, it's just over a mile, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit shallow to me. But I think when we look at this again, and Chris Thomas is correct that if this is a route that people want to decide to go down, then it really is something that needs to be done, with all due care. And I say that as someone who, as you know, sort of pretty much opposed completely to the idea of it.
Well, we'll see. Time goes on, and there will be a general election in, September 2026?
Yes, but that's that's a very, very long time away. A week is a long time in politics, and I dare say in the near future we might actually find out how short a week in politics can be.
Okay, all right, Bonzo, have a good weekend.
Okay, Andy, bye.
Good to hear from you. Andy's with us now on Mannin Line. Hi, Andy.
Hi there, good afternoon to you. Before I forget, good luck to the Ireland ladies cricket team playing in Romania this afternoon. The Information Commissioner, please, Andy. Yes. I looked on your website and I've not been able to find any story that Manx Radio has run regarding his resignation. Can you please just remind us, when did he resign? This was highlighted, I think, in the item by Mr. Weatherall from the Lib Bannon Party.
I think it was around June that Ian MacDonald made the announcement.
Correct.
He made the announcement, just saying there wasn't enough money. He wanted an assistant and didn't get one.
Thank you.
And then Nicola Whiting pulled out as well.
Yeah. So thank you. Yes, in June. So bearing in mind the high-profile nature of this position, I'm slightly surprised as to why this has only appeared courtesy of Mr. Weatherall and the Liberal Bannon Party, and it's not been a story that's been publicised either in newsprint or on the radio.
Well, I can tell you for a fact it was mentioned by me the moment that it happened. It was on Mannin Line in June.
Aha. Okay. But it didn't get covered as story because I used the search index and was not able to find anything about it in June.
What do you think this implies then? The fact that the Information Commissioner and his deputy, and although they're saying that they have appointed somebody, but they're in the UK.
Oh no, I didn't know that. Not again. I mean, what is it with this government having to appoint people who are in the UK and have no obligation, if anything goes wrong, to be held account? And what is it with this government? Well, they just don't learn.
Well, particularly now because information, freedom of information has certainly risen to the surface in the national consciousness, and the fact that the Information Commissioner, he was honest about his departure, not enough money, not enough resources, and no assistance. So, he can obviously go and get a job somewhere else where he is resourced.
Sure. Anyway, moving on slightly from that then, as you've now mentioned that, freedom of information. I wondered if you personally have had a chance to look at the most recent Paul Moulton broadcast.
I've seen some of his videos. Yes, I've not been able to read much of the information, but yeah, do go on.
So I've looked at that and I've considered: is what he said completely true and honest? And I have to believe from how he said it, yes, it is. So on that basis, I'm wondering, how is it that, again, the print and radio have not followed up about the conclusions that he's drawn? And in particular, the slap order. Have the press, the printed press, or Manx Radio, for example, been given notice that almost like, what was it called in the UK, a D order, that they should not deal with this matter?
Not that I know of, but then again, I'm not the news editor.
Sorry, who is the news editor these days?
News editor is Beth Espy.
Okay. And would there be any conflict of interest there?
That's something you'd have to ask.
Bearing in mind one of the parties mentioned by Mr. Moulton. Anyway, the next item.
Sorry, Andy, you're in the wind a lot there. We can hardly hear you.
I am. Let me just stand back. Okay.
Where about are you in Romania?
I'm not today, unfortunately. I'm in Sydney Street, Douglas. But just waiting to get into the car. But the other item was about energy independence and what people have been talking about. And there is also, I believe, a plan to have a new interconnector cable.
Well, there's a plan, but I mean that'll be decades away.
Why do you say that, please, Andy?
Well, you don't just getting another internet. It's not that you can nip to B&Q and just get an interconnector. You have to. I mean, do you remember when the Jules Verne, the vessel that put the current interconnector in? You don't just get those at a moment's notice. You have to book them years ahead.
Okay. Well, you said decades. I was told yesterday by somebody who might well have good information, 7 years. And yet I was looking at an article. What raised this was I was looking at an article published in March that the Greek cable manufacturer Hellenic Cables has signed a contract with the Greek electricity grid operator for the connection of the Cyclades interconnection project. And that's for a interconnector with a total length of 170 kilometres. Now, the distance for our interconnectors is 104 kilometres. So this Hellenic Cables are going to design, manufacture and supply the high voltage onshore and offshore cables and accessories, and will deliver the installation, laying and protection of the cables implementation, necessary joint determinations, as well as the final tests after installation. The implementation of the project, including the installation of the cables, is to be completed, wait for it, within 28 months. So, you've said decades, I was told 7 years. Again, which shop do the MUA think they're going to get something that's going to take 7 years or even decades, when in Greece you can have this cable laid in 28 months from signing of the contract?
We watch and we wait. We watch and we wait, Andy.
We're just being told complete rubbish by people. That's all I can assume.
All right. Thanks for calling today.
Much, Andy. Have a great weekend.
You too as well. Thanks for calling today. And also I want to thank Mike, who just shot me a couple of terrific photos in, including, it's hard enough trying to run a business these days, but apparently nothing can be done about these vehicles. They're taxed and registered locally, and there is grass growing under one. Now, this is, have you driven down Mona Drive lately? Drive down Mona Drive from Victoria Road, takes you down onto it's Empress Drive, isn't it? Just a block away from the prom. Mona Drive is something else. Is anybody going to do anything about those trees on Mona Drive? It's like the Addams family are living there.
Sitting on a beautiful sunlit terrace with views over the sea, savouring exquisite Mediterranean food. It's the holiday experience we all dream of, and you don't even need to leave the island to enjoy it. Leonardo's in Castletown brings you authentic flavours from tapas to pasta in a welcoming Mediterranean atmosphere. Open Tuesday to Sunday, noon till 3 and 6 till 8. Taste the Mediterranean at Leonardo's in Castle Street. Search them on Facebook.
I've just called the Guernsey Bank, Skipton International, about our savings.
And did you get a helpful robot?
No. At Skipton International, you speak to a very helpful, real person.
That's refreshing these days.
Well, that's why I chose them, for the perfect combination of personal customer service and some of the best savings rates. All by calling 01481 730 730 or visit skiptoninternational.com.
Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the Guernsey Financial Services Commission and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. Details at dcs.gg. Terms and conditions apply.
Want to make a real difference to your home or workplace energy bills? The team at EMS Home Green have 30 years experience supplying and installing solar power and thermal systems, air and ground source heat pumps and battery storage. A complete one-stop eco-shop finding practical solutions to help you save money from day one. Call 613-210 or visit ems.co.im to arrange your no-obligation survey. EMS Home Green, for your greener home.
Weekend or workend, you're tuned to the Sunday Chill Out Show with Chris Pearson on Manx Radio.
Every Sunday night, we bring the Ibiza beach vibe to the shores of the Isle of Man for those long, light summer evenings. Brought to you by Spectrum Windows, we mix up classic chill beats with the coolest new cuts right here on the nation station, Manx Radio. Join me to chill Sunday evenings from 7.
The Sunday Chill Out.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
11 minutes before 1, and thanks for the photos. If you've got any photos of cars or vehicles with grass growing underneath them on public roads, then we'll collect a little a little album of them. Thanks for those. And Mona Drive. Regarding the vehicle issues on the Isle of Man, says Jane, large vehicles as well as unroadworthy eyesores parked on the highways have never understood why the Isle of Man just doesn't bring in MOT regulations for private vehicles. It'll be a start to tackling the problem and will be an additional income stream for the government. Do any listeners know why the MOT scheme doesn't exist on the Isle of Man? Obviously, if you bring in a vehicle in, you have to have it tested, but no ongoing walls. Well, whether you think that will be a good idea, whether it would get rid of some of the eyesores, and also there are vehicles on the Isle of Man that can remove. There are HIABs that can get rid of vehicles and can take vehicles away. So why doesn't the government employ some of those and just take these vehicles away and see what the owners say? Wild campers are a new big nuisance too, especially on the Key and P appeal. They make it very difficult for the RNLI crew to get an emergency launch in race week. Is that true? Are you aware of that? Thanks to everybody sending in the photos. You can send it in by WhatsApp, but also you can send it in to Mannin Line at manxradio.com. Shout out for the Mark Cavendish documentary on Netflix, says Charlie. Very good. He's got to be the greatest sportsman the Isle of Man has ever produced. I take my hat off to Mark Cavendish and his family, says Charlie. There are 2 untaxed motorhomes near my home that are used as homestay for TT and MGP. Is that true? In other times of the year, so somebody is renting out a motorhome during TT and MG. Is that allowed? There's litter left behind and human waste put down road drains, yet Ramsey Town Commissioners do nothing, can't be bothered. You only have to look at the general state of Ramsey, says Fran on 762. Hi, Fran, haven't heard from you for a while. Regarding the proposed parking restrictions for 1.8 metre high vehicles, there are at least 7 vehicles parked on the road where I park at night in my transit-size work van. It's the vehicle I used to travel to and from work every day. So where are all of these vehicles meant to park, says Chris in Port St Mary. The minority own motorhomes. They're unhappy, says G. The majority drive cars and can't park their vehicles. Let's see how the voting goes at the next election. Some of the rumours about the Manxman faults are a bit worrying. I wonder when the steam pack is going to tell us what is going on, says Mike on Air 437. Michael, we've asked the question. We just wait for the response. We don't have many hotels anymore, so we want visitors to come to the Isle of Man. Are they trying to kill the Isle of Man with all these rules and regulations, says John. If you stop large vehicles, text to 100. If you stop large vehicles from one place, of course the problem is just going to move somewhere else. So why don't we have an area for vehicle storage that is paid for by the vehicle tax, as you can't charge people road tax and tell them they can't park on the road. Just make a place where people with large vehicles can park. Never mind camper vans, what about all the cars trying to get out of Peel to Kirkmichael and Douglas? There are so many cars parked coming down to the width of streets again now. Our streets were built for tiny cars. Some were built before then, but cars used to be a lot smaller because of safety regulations. Our cars are now a lot rounder and a lot bigger. There are many marked works vehicles parked outside homes at weekends. I wonder if they have insurance covering personal use to and from work and the shops. The height limit is too low. It affects many cars, MPVs, SUVs, roof racks as well. Will a roof rack count in the height of a vehicle? Will it affect evening, hotel and venue business away from residential areas? And Alfonso on 004 says, Andy, street parking is a widespread issue. York Road is currently closed for resurfacing. Traffic's diverted down Withington Road. There are cones out restricting parking, yet residents ignore these and park between the cones, says Alfonso. You shouldn't laugh. The issue is that these large van owners often take up 3 parking spaces for the other residents. They go on holidays and leave their large vans there for weeks. So don't forget they also have other vehicles as well. They leave people who have one car unable to park. And Ed in Castletown, Andy, does the proposed 1.86 metre vehicle height prohibition take into account, again, roof bars, roof racks, roof storage boxes and bicycles on the roof? The weight law mentioned only applies in residential parking zones. Most streets and lanes aren't in these, says Texter 820. And finally, on enforcement, the DOI has around 4 wardens. Local authorities can be warranted, says 820. And if the large vehicle problem is about access in housing estates and emergency services getting through, why don't the proposed new rules include vehicle width? Just a thought. I'm dead against the whole thing, by the way, says Critch. Well, vehicle width certainly is. You can have. Maybe everybody should get a J-van. The Japanese came across this problem years ago and created these tiny little vans, the J-vans. Maybe we could invent our own. The Manx van. Or bring back the bring back the Peel car. Everybody has a Peel car. Now, that will be an innovative answer, don't you think? Excellent call by Chris Thomas to rid our residential streets of antisocial practice of parking of work vans and motorhomes. Big Phil. They should be banned, no ifs, no buts, no maybes. If they want to park, they should approach a farmer to park their vehicles on a farmer's land. I'm sure many would welcome the revenue. Well, maybe that's the answer. Farmers could get permission to have a section of their land, and one of their fields could be a big van park. So on Monday, Arbury Castle Town and Glover MHK's Jason Morehouse and Tim Glover will be on. Oh, a message in from Ellie, by the way. She said, this guy who got 20 years running his organisation behind bars, how did the SIM cards get into the prison? Well, we've asked that question too. Thanks to Howie Kane and Chris on the phones today.
W.
Have a good weekend.
I. N. T.